What's your thoughts on the Backstreet Boys?
I do not have any thoughts about the Backstreet Boys.
Film dogs back, all right. Do you know that reference? Would you know that reference?
I know the reference.
That's your cold open.
Oh my God.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'm haunted. Is this a horror episode? Okay. I can dig it.
Haunted. Like Ellen in Nosferatu?
Like. Yes.
Like. Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to the Film Dogs. I'm Mr. B.
I am your favorite, Lord Marcus.
I'm already offended.
Welcome to our show this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we are going to be diving into watch list suggestions for you, our audience. We're going to share some movies that we have been watching recently that we feel are of tremendous conversational value.
Films that are worth your time. And when we say films that we've watched recently, we're not just saying films that are in theaters or just available on streaming. Some of these you might have to buy. Like, the point of Watchlist is good movies that you can recommend people to watch from the beginning of movies being made till current day. Because the whole tagline of our show is life is too short for bad cinema. So we really want to share with you what we have been watching recently that we have enjoyed and that we feel is worth sharing or has conversation pieces tonight. Like, especially one of the big films we do want to talk about is one of our shared favorite directors, Robert Eggers.
My goodness.
And his new film, Nosferatu.
He is one stone cold virtuoso. Man, he's so good. I cannot, man, I am so, I don't even know. I'm left speechless by what he puts on screen in such a good, powerful way. There's just not enough words in the English language to do his films justice.
Yeah. God bless Robert Eggers, because we really need directors like him having wins in Hollywood and influence in that realm at the moment. We were, just before we were recording, maybe we should have recorded that. You kind of talked about like Ari Aster kind of being of same likeness and power and amount of films. And I go, there actually are some very amazing, still young directors. Like, there's pretty good young blood for making great films. You know, Hollywood is not dead. Cinema isn't dead. It's not just going to be superhero movies every day coming out in theaters. There's fantastic movies that are out and that we want to talk about and we want to share with you.
You know, I think that is very interesting in a different lens as well. So we will be talking about Nosferatu and Mr. Eggers. But often in these powerhouse events like we had last year with Barbenheimer, and that was obviously a signal to studios of how to get people into the theater. And then people might be expecting that. And for the billions of people that love both of those movies so much, it's sort of an indicator of what kind of films are going to get made and greenlit to get people into the theater.
Yeah.
And so by contrast, there's still wonderful films being made that aren't in the likeness of those two powerhouses. And maybe they start to get a little, for lack of a better word, this sort of post-traumatic letdown of what the larger audience wants. And so we have these films that are made by great directors that just, they get lost in the shuffle, or there's not a lot of hype around them, or one person doesn't like a certain brand. And so when the word spreads and it becomes maybe a possibly 4-star film, that everybody's just sort of down on, even though they haven't seen it. The buzz isn't quite what they like. And so I think we want to just get right into it.
Yeah, we are your hype people.
We are your hype people. The first film we're going to tackle tonight is by Mr. M. Night Shyamalan.
Shyamalan.
And his...
I've heard so many different pronunciations of his name on podcasts recently, and I was like, oh, okay.
Well, if he would like to ring in and give us the correct pronunciation, I will DM us on Instagram, and I will text you my number. But his new movie, Trap.
Yes.
Starring Josh Hartnett. Oh, my goodness.
Can I already hit pause and say, as Mr. B, the hype man, is Josh Hartnett back?
Let me tell you. What's your experience with Josh Hartnett?
You'll like this, I think.
Okay.
Like that this would be how I came to him.
Right.
Because it's an odd one. The moment you say Josh Hartnett, I think of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, right on. Fair enough.
And I'm not sure if it was because I was like peak teenager at that time and in dating and in relationships and stuff like that, and already still interest in World War II and world wars and stuff, that when Pearl Harbor came out with that cast, it kind of had a buzz around it for like the teens, like the heartthrobs of who was in Hollywood at the moment, and to kind of have this pop culture, I hate to call Pearl Harbor that, but have this big moment in history and American influence be really marketed like a bit pop.
Oh, for sure.
If that makes sense. Yeah, a bit pop. So I'm going, if you were a teenager, Pearl Harbor and its release was a big deal, and who was in it, and even the color and the tone of the film and how it was shot. Yeah. So that's how I know Josh Hartnett. And outside of that, not as many influential moments, but I've loved everything that he's in.
Well, Virgin Suicides, I think, was the first time that I had really paid attention to him. I am sure I'd seen him in some other films.
Iconic. Yeah.
I most remember 40 Days and 40 Nights.
Ah, yes. That, like I said, another good one. He's a consistent man.
Now, with that said, like, he's not been high profile, main movie leading man.
He could.
He definitely could. And let me say this, I don't even want to talk too much about what Trap is about because it blew me away. I kind of knew what was going on. I think from the synopsis, you'd probably kind of figure out what was going on.
I just know the references from what people have already been talking about and how it's been marketed, even with its trailer.
I don't think there's, I don't want to spoil anything. I don't think there's a lot of secrets. I'll just say this on the surface is that for me, as an appreciator of a lot of his previous films, this by far, not even a close second. It is my favorite Josh Hartnett performance. He's having so much fun. I can't believe that people are bagging this movie out because they just must be sticks in the mud, to put it as nicely as possible, because, man, this guy was having so much fun on set, and he brought me along for the ride. So if you can find a way to connect with the characters on screen, then you're in for it. And I'm not really sure why this movie didn't do so well. Like, it was very Hitchcockian. It was thrilling. It was in your face. It was gently comedic. It wasn't overly horrifying, but it had a little bit of everything, I think, for everybody. I really enjoyed the heck out of it, man.
I was listening to one of our shared podcasts that we like on films, and they were talking about marketing behind the film. They didn't agree on the spin and hate around it. Like there was something in the marketing machine that kind of broke the film.
Well, I think maybe
because
it is
better.
Names.
It is meant to be better than what everybody's saying, and that's what I've been hearing recently from people that are proper reviewers that love movies and are into cinema that we would respect as well. And they're going, Trap isn't garbage.
It would make my top 20 of the year. Like it's not in my top 10 conversation, but I would easily put it alongside like Long Legs, which I found entertaining, but not like awesome A plus 10 out of 10.
Okay.
But super enjoyable.
Yeah.
In that vein. Look, the filmmaking is great. It's thrilling, much like a Alfred Hitchcock movie, modernized. But Josh Hartnett is worth every single penny of admission. And by the way, like on Amazon Prime, it's 99-cent rental. So yeah, what are you waiting for? Put it on tonight and then put it on again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was blown away. It was really good.
Well, and without giving anything away, Letterboxd actually has a great description of the film without you having to watch the trailer. But it just says, a father and teen daughter attend a pop concert where they realize they're at the center of a dark, sinister event. I go, that is a great leading sentence into what you are going to get. And if you're familiar with the director, M. Night Shyamalan, and his films, because, dude, if we're talking on directors that only have 10, 15 films, he has not really made that many misses. In
maybe The Last Airbender.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. But if you are somebody who likes M. Night Shyamalan, we pretend that movie doesn't exist.
Hey, if you like his previous films and you would count yourself in his fandom, and you've been turned off by like bad press or whatever might have led you down to think like the way that I was, because I wasn't really excited to see it in the theater. It also wasn't in my face. It wasn't like it was showing at the screen right down the road from me.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen this in the theater. I really liked it a lot.
That's great, because it's we you know, you're always watching different things. I'm watching different things, and then we get the rare event when we can go to see a movie together, which is probably the funnest part of the pod.
Faux show.
And you had mentioned you had seen this, and it was kind of before I could. And when this one kind of came out, it was hard for me to get to the cinema, and because of the marketing machine wasn't really there. It really, that was probably the problem. Nobody was really talking about the film, and if they did, they just kind of brushed it over. So it had kind of come out. I don't think there were that many showings in the grand scheme of what was available.
I can't even remember really like a plethora of reviews coming out. It just had this like lukewarm greeting.
Yeah.
And I've like, that's almost its own bad press.
Yeah, correct.
Like no press.
Exactly. So I missed this one, but I knew I was going to watch it. It was M. Night Shyamalan, but hearing other people talk about it, I was like, oh, I'll just wait. I'll just wait. And it's only been recently that a lot of people have kind of been like, don't crap on Trap. How's that for a rhyme?
Boom. Let's make a t-shirt. It's super good. I recommend. And it's safe. There's nothing that I could find to say offensive about this movie at all. I think it.
Well, what's your interpretation of safe when you watch movies? Because as Lord Marcus, when we were saying in the last episode, I sometimes I'm allured to both the sacred and the profane. It seems like you're more lured to the profane.
Yeah, well, safe for me. I think I said fun was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my idea of fun.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it like that?
No, it's not. It's not insane levels of anything.
It's a little less fun than Chainsaw Massacre.
Hey, look, it's Josh Hartnett makes it so fun.
Okay.
I can't say anything else other than that. Like, yeah. I am just saying, I promise that if you like the director and you like the actor, this is gonna be a home run for you for sure. One thumb up from Lord Marcus.
That's awesome, because it's kind of going to be up on my since you had watched it and was raving about it recently. It's moved up on my watch list. I'm kind of bummed that I haven't watched it now. I believed the bad hype, that it might just be mediocre, and you're like, it's not bad. And then a few other people have been like, dude, it's pretty good.
It is.
Yeah. I finally jumped into another movie that really didn't get marketed well either, if you knew much about it. Juror number 2, which is Clint Eastwood's most recent film. And it's kind of a modern court drama. And it's kind of his version of what we deserve to have an updated Gresham novel on screen, which really dominated the 90s. Like how many, there are so many movies that you could count that came out that were all like courtroom dramas. So to kind of do a modern spin on that, I thought was interesting choice by Clint. And he built it around the cast of Nicholas Hoult, Toni Collette, Zoe Deutsch, J.K. Simmons makes an appearance, and Kiefer Sutherland, who I haven't seen in a while, and it was nice to see him back in a film and only on screen for a few scenes, but did really well. And it tells the story of a young soon-to-be father who has been issued to jury duty, and he's trying to find a reason to get out of it. And apparently he's been called to it before, and they're talking about excuses. So he's trying to get out of it. Well, he gets into jury duty, and then we find out that the case that's happening, there may or may not be involvement of this guy who made it onto the jury. And that's really all that you kind of need to say about the film. I want you to watch it. I don't want to give too much away. But even me just selling you that line of how do you feel as a human being in jury duty personally, if you do get called up, having actually be involved potentially in the crime yourself in some way, or have seen it, or that sort of part. It really makes a weird commentary on our court system in the States. Some American themes that Clint Eastwood tends to like to talk about. He gets quite political in his films. But I thought it was very entertaining. I even got Mrs. B to watch it in the background, and it's interesting. It keeps you interested till the end. There are some interesting twists in it, and it feels like it gives away its cards early, but never really goes where you think it's going to go. And that's where I give mad props to Clint. Have you heard much about the film or watched the trailer or anything like that?
Also a victim of the sort of no press. Everything that I have heard about this has come from critics, really, and maybe other Letterboxd users. But interestingly, on Letterboxd, now we're talking about Clint Eastwood. Besides being a wonderful actor, he has directed some powerful films. And I was going to list just a couple for people that might have forgotten partial of his filmography. $1 Million Baby, Mystic River, American Sniper,
Gran Torino,
Unforgiven, The Mule, Bridges of Madison County,
yeah,
Flags of Our Fathers, Letters from Iwo Jima,
yeah,
Pale Rider. I could keep on going. J. Edgar.
Yeah.
Juror number 2 is the highest rated film on Letterboxd out of his filmography.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And that's what's interesting is our different information that we use online, and listening to even, I think, Fennessy and the crew over at The Ringer talking about this film. And they mentioned that it sounds like the studio used it as a write-off, as a tax write-off. So, and that's what happened. They just did the dirty to Clint and wanted to have the film on their roster just so they could write it off at the end of the year and make it into the negative so that they didn't have to pay tax. So they spent no money on it, which is really a big FU to Clint, who was a great.
All-time great.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we, the audience, are the ones that are going to, hey, the studio's in a sort of a win-win, because if it ends up being successful, they didn't put any money into it. They're going to make even more money. So really, we can't worry too much about studio politics.
Yeah, for sure.
Right on.
What was your next watch?
My next watch that I recommend for anyone's watch list with an open mind, Blink Twice, the debut feature film from the daughter of Lenny Kravitz.
American Woman,
Mrs. Zoe Kravitz.
Zoe.
And I'll tell you what, this is another one that really surprised me. It really, really surprised me. My goodness, this was so good. I did not know really what to expect.
Did you watch the trailer before?
I the only trailer that I watched was the trailer that on Amazon Prime, that when you're sort of renting it, buying it, it's playing in the background. That was all that I'd seen. I did not really know much about it except that Channing Tatum was in it. That was the only thing that I knew, was that Channing Tatum was in it.
Okay. And you didn't know that Zoe was directing or involved in it, or?
I knew from, not when I rented it, I did not know. But I did remember after I started looking at it, I was like, oh, yes. Now I do remember, because the original title of the film was Pussy Island. And I remember, I was like, wow, that's crazy that she would make a movie called Pussy Island. And I didn't know that it had changed to Blink Twice. So
okay.
I was sort of unfamiliar, and it was just sort of a happy coincidence. This movie was so good. Oh, my goodness.
Question.
Yes.
Did you know that Haley Joel Osment was in the film?
I sure did.
Do you have a thought on Haley Joel Osment? Go.
He peaked on film one.
You meanie. Are you considering that The Sixth Sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think... Oh, artificial intelligence. I thought he was pretty good.
Correct. He is an AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good. I didn't care for Pay It Forward. I'm not really like... Look, he was okay in this movie, but it's weird when the way child actors grow up, and you look at they're not the same. And Macaulay Culkin was exactly the same.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's not the kid from Home Alone anymore.
You know, Mrs. B calls me a child actor sometimes.
I don't. I could join that bandwagon.
Yeah. So tell me about the film then, Blink Twice. So you didn't really know much about it going into it, but you're saying this is worth your time, and you ended up watching it. I haven't seen it yet. I have seen some of the marketing from it and part of the trailer, which I turned off, which I needed to because I thought I was giving too much away. I have a fear of trailers, people. I was very interested in it. So now that you've seen it, and it sounds like you're going, watch it.
I am saying...
Talk to me about it.
I am definitely saying watch it.
Do you like Zoe Kravitz?
Oh, I love Zoe Kravitz.
Did you watch High Fidelity?
I did.
Did you like High Fidelity?
I didn't like it as much as the original movie High Fidelity, which was awesome.
No, fair enough.
That had her mother in it.
Yeah.
Which was... I just felt that Lisa Bonet had a way better command of the character. But Zoe Kravitz in Fury Road, in Batman... and Big Little Lies, man.
Yeah.
Huge fan.
Yeah, excellent.
Blink Twice, just the Letterboxd synopsis, which doesn't really give anything away.
Yeah, fair enough.
When tech billionaire Slater King meets cocktail waitress Frida at his fundraising gala, he invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on his private island. But despite the epic setting, beautiful people, ever-flowing champagne, and late-night dance parties, Frida can sense that there's something sinister hiding beneath the island's lush facade.
The lush facade.
It also stars Christian Slater. And as you said, Haley Joel Osment. And then some people that... Gina Davis makes a nice appearance, as does Kyle MacLachlan. So, hey there, Agent Dale Cooper. You've seen better days. I can't say enough. It keeps you guessing. It is not an easy film to figure out. So, like, part of the entertainment is you don't really know what's going on, and it keeps you a little disoriented. And even after you kind of maybe get a grip on what's going on, it leaves you disoriented. And the directing was so good. The acting actually was really good as well. There was a lot of actors that I wasn't familiar with. And that just goes to show if you got one or two, like a Channing Tatum, you can have an elevated, talented supporting cast that maybe has not been in a whole lot of other movies, but it worked really well. Now, there are some, I'll say this, it's not quite as safe as what I would say Trap is. It's a little more violent.
Yeah.
Not the entire movie's not a violent movie, but there's some more graphic violence in this.
I thought you were saying there was maybe some disturbing stuff that you wouldn't normally.
And there is a warning before the movie starts that it may be traumatic to people that suffer from a particular type of stress.
Yeah.
So you get that warning in advance. So just keep that in mind. Definitely not one for the kids. And that is nothing. It's a rated R, so you wouldn't have the kids watching it anyway.
Yeah. It is 2025, my friend.
My goodness.
Parents are doing some wild shit these days.
Oh, it's like 1970s again.
Yeah.
Channing Tatum is worth the price of admission, but Zoe Kravitz is the real master here and the MVP. Her way to get the best out of these actors and to tell a pretty unique story. The ending didn't quite stick it for me. It wasn't a flawless movie, but it was an interesting ending, and it wasn't a horrible. It just, I like these endings that, let's say, like the triangle of sadness, where you don't know if the main character got killed.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's running to the rescue, and it just sort of leaves you in limbo. Yeah. I would have liked something like that for this, but real solid effort.
A side question.
Okay. Side answer.
Do you go Chris Hemsworth in Furiosa, or do you watch Blink Twice for Channing Tatum?
I'd go Blink Twice for Channing Tatum.
You reckon?
Yeah.
I think because I think that's an interesting question of leading man, or supporting actor doing a different style film that you've never seen them kind of potentially play before. I felt like the marketing behind Blink Twice was Channing Tatum's going to be a sick fuck in this one.
Yeah, but he was in The Hateful Eight. So, like, it's not a radical departure.
Yeah.
And plus, you wouldn't have to sit through the 3-hour dog pile of Furiosa just to get to the juicy Chris Hemsworth parts, because he does make it worth seeing the movie. But in my opinion, he's the only reason that movie's good. And Blink Twice is good whether Channing Tatum is in it or not. It does help because it just gives
the entire
film sort of this bit of gravity to it.
Yeah.
But I think overall, for me, a totally different type of movie, but I'd prefer Blink Twice to Furiosa.
Yeah, okay.
If nothing else, that's a lot shorter. And Furiosa was just this long slag through boredom.
I just think it's two recent movies that have been released that people might be comparing what you spend your time watching, that both
Lord
people
Marcus
are aware
says
of.
Go with Blink Twice over Furiosa. If you're ranking your watch list, Lord Marcus suggests Blink Twice at number 6 and Furiosa at number 11.
Do you know what I watched recently for the first time since I was probably a child?
Tell me and tell us, Mr. B.
I mean, I guess this might have to be an insight into how good my childhood is.
Right on.
Maybe. Who shows their kids or lets them watch Lawrence of Arabia by David Lean, 1962?
I think parents that want their kids to be well educated in the ways of the world.
Yeah, there was
the fact that you would not show your children this movie says more about how great your parents were.
Same parents that showed me Amadeus Young as well, which I think is interesting that was such a important film to you, that we would both have it was shown me on purpose and talked about, and we were allowed a lot of old school movies from the 60s and because I'm a late 80s kid.
What did you think of your adulthood revisit of Lawrence of Arabia?
It made me understand why my parents showed me the movie. And that was worth the rewatch in itself and a special memory. Because for someone who enjoys to watch a movie, whether you consider yourself a cinephile or not, our podcast isn't about snobbery. The point is, what we've said is, don't spend your time on bad cinema. And this movie is so important to cinema in general, with parts that were played, how things were written, how things were shot. It's considered one of the greatest films of all time, and there's a reason why. So being shown it as a kid by my parents, and like being allowed to watch it when I was younger, nowadays, even with the social issue that it tackles, or a famous story in history being shown to you when you're young, I think it's formative and it's helpful. And if you want to get into what I suggest as being higher film, like not just spoonfuls of sugar being shoved down your throat, pop, and annoying, and a marketing machine, but proper good cinema. The shots are incredible. The writing, the dialogue is incredible. It tells a story. It's epic. They don't make movies like they used to. And on the scale of this film, it tells the story of British officer T.E. Lawrence in his mission to aid the Arab tribes in their revolt against the Ottoman Empire. And it just says, Lawrence becomes a flamboyant messianic figure in the cause of Arab unity, but his psychological instability threatens to undermine his achievements. It's a very interesting social question. And when I was texting you about me rewatching it, I think one of your replies was interesting. Maybe one of the biggest white messiah complex films ever made, but still doesn't detract from it being an absolutely incredible film of epic proportion.
I could not agree more. I dare say top 5 of all time for cinematography, particularly for like desert cinematography. In fact, I would go as far as to say is that Dune really is the only kind of challenger for like desert cinematography. It was so beautiful to watch and look at. And Peter O'Toole is just a titan. He is so good.
Yeah.
He's so funny. He's so charming. He's so sincere. He's so tragic. Man, he was such a great actor in every role that he tackled. And this is probably maybe his crowning achievement of his entire career.
Yeah.
I really liked it a lot. Now, it was this sort of, what does it say about white men that make movies about white men saving non-white people?
Yeah.
That is my biggest that is my biggest problem with this. And then Alec Guinness is cast as an Arab.
Prince Faisal. Yeah.
But with that said, Omar Sharif, Anthony Quinn, these guys, I had never seen them in like really anything except when they were quite a bit older.
Mm-hmm.
To see them so young, oh my goodness, it was so good. The cinematography, like for me, without a doubt, this is one of the best looking films ever made. It deserved every award that it got. It's one of the best acted films ever made. I have not seen this director's. I've not seen any of his other features.
Really?
And I would be interested. Like The Bridge on the River Kwai has been on my list for a really long time.
Yeah, you didn't have any memories around Dr. Zhivago? Because that's another big one of his.
I only saw the remake of Dr. Zhivago.
Okay.
So, and I really liked that. And that's the kind of film I probably would tackle it again because I'm more into Russian history. I could get like if we were going to tackle his filmography, I could get into that. I enjoyed this so much. Some minor problems for me, only because of we need white man to come in and solve the crises.
Yeah, it is still. I like its tackle on that famous story, though.
Oh, for sure.
And Peter O'Toole's performance is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
All inspiring and tear jerking in moments.
Yeah,
and like he was a real hero. Like this was for me. Even though it's got this white savior complex to it, he was a hero. And in this film, he was portrayed and he delivered the goods. You want to see a heroic movie? This is a heroic movie. It was really good.
I just love the grandiosity of his performance and of the film.
And we would talk about of the time.
Set design, production design, and use of casts. And that was what we're talking about.
With the extras. You couldn't do that again these days. Like the entire frame is like a mile away from the action and it's just filled with people. You couldn't afford to do that. Like that would cost millions these days just to pay 10,000 people to be on set for a day.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that. I don't think that can happen anymore. It was very unique. It was so wonderful to watch. Really like that one a lot.
I think what really brought us back to the film was wanting to finally watch The Ruling Class, and then we watched that together because they are such polarizing different films and roles for Peter O'Toole that his range is absolutely insane.
He is my Mount Rushmore. He is on it for actors. He is so good. My goodness.
Is there anybody that you could compare him to today? Like, do you have anybody that you feel like can contain his energy?
I don't think that there's one person that could do everything that he did. for the dramatic portion, obviously Daniel Day-Lewis can handle drama like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But he's not really a very funny guy. Like, he couldn't play like a lighthearted dandy.
Yeah.
Peter O'Toole could play a lighthearted dandy.
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis he's the butcher, and he's an oilman, and he's ruthless. And he plays hard-ass characters. He doesn't tackle any kind of light fare or comedy, really, to an extent. Doesn't really do romance either. His romances are very dark and tragic. Now, I prefer that. So I would almost say Peter O'Toole, you would need the dramatic chops of Daniel Day-Lewis and the lightheartedness of, oh, man, I can't even think of anybody modern.
What was your next watch?
Dun 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 dun. Now we have arrived.
That's a patent song. Copyrighted. Should I keep that on the pod?
Yeah,
trying
totally.
to say patented.
Robert Pattinson.
That's a patented song. You can't replay that song. It's only available on the Film Dogs.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our conversation about the current sensation, Nosferatu.
Oh shit! I thought you were going to say Mufasa.
By Robert Eggers, who we've already spent a little bit of time talking about.
Yeah.
Now, this film is a remake of the 1922 horror masterpiece, maybe even the birthing of the film genre.
The birthing
of the horror genre. It is an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
The original story was that F.W. Murnau wanted to shoot this film about Dracula. The studio couldn't get the permission and the copyright. The family's estate did not want to give the rights for the movie to be made. And so they got around that by changing the story slightly. They changed Count Dracula to Count Orlok. They made some small changes to how vampires get killed and where they feed from, but largely the story is nearly identical. So we have Bram Stoker's Dracula. F.W. Murnau in Germany decides he wants to shoot this film. He makes Nosferatu in 1922, and it is a sensation of the world. And now we are 103 years later down the road. And this version, for me, is a 25-star masterpiece.
Wow.
Man,
you're coming out a-blazing.
I loved it so much. My summary, and like I could save this. This could be my closing statement about it, but I'm going to make my opening statement.
Yeah.
What Robert Eggers has done has made vampire horror again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's no getting around it. Prior to this film being released, vampires aren't scary. Now, name me one scary vampire.
No,
not even Dracula.
Funny.
Not even Dracula was scary.
It's been a bit of a mockery.
Dracula's the butt of jokes. He's not even like nobody cares. Teenagers don't care about Dracula.
Your blood.
Yeah, and just super campy. Like, nothing scary about it. It's like it's meant to make you. Dracula's sort of meant to make you laugh.
Yeah.
And vampires are sexy, and that's what teenage YOLO dramas are all about.
YOLO dramas.
Twilight and Kirsten Stewart and our main man Robert Pattinson.
Our Pats.
Nothing against the Twilight series, but it wasn't a horror movie, and it was not in any kind of way. The vampires in that were not scary.
Mm-hmm.
There was no real emotion. There was no terrifying emotion. And man, Robert Eggers has brought whatever an A game is, whatever Michael Jordan has was far beyond an A game. And that's what Robert Eggers has brought in some Michael Jordan magic into the world with this remake. Man, I'm obsessed with it. It is so good. It has stayed with me. A week later, I'm still thinking about it every single day. Amazing. And it was the first night that we've had out the movies in a while since Biff. Great to get out and see something.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was our shared, probably most anticipated film of 2025. We were hoping it was going to be out in 2024, but we didn't get it till the beginning.
Man, it was so good. Like, the sound was so good. Here's the thing. I don't know how he did it, but I just felt that this was the scariest version of the Count, and however we want to call him, it doesn't really matter. It was scary. It was terrifying. It wasn't overdone. It was amazing. So, like, a home run for Bill Skarsgård for playing the Count. Lily Rose Depp, my God.
Dude, the voice that Skarsgård pulled for this role is impossible.
It is one reason to go see this film.
It's a human feat.
One reason to see this film amongst many. But if you only needed one, the vocal effects or whatever you want to call it, the sound mixing on this guy's voice, good God. Like see it in Dolby Atmos, by the way. Oh, man, it was so
this film, and Eggers has talked about it, deserves to be in a Dolby space that at least gives you Atmos. How they engineered it, who they got in to do it, and all the ideas behind it. It's made for Atmos, and it's incredible the sound effects that they use. But what's more incredible is the fact that Skarsgård pulled that voice himself through going to see an opera vocal coach, and he took professional lessons to drop his voice a full octave for his main performances without injuring his vocal.
And you won't see this in the trailers at all because this is being marketed absolutely correctly.
Yeah.
Look, I would say largely that people have a problem with this are uptight. Here's the thing. For people that are panning this, as I say, look, if it's not your bag, that's okay. And luckily for me, a filmmaker that I love, it's going to be his highest grossing movie. It is doing extremely well, and for a very good reason, because it rocks. Now, I could see where in the last 20 years, people expect something from a vampire movie. And I could see where they would be disappointed going in to see their new vampire movie that's starring Lily Rose Depp and Bill Skarsgård as being like, oh, wow, like I'm going to be moved in a particular way. And then they get the shit scared out of them. And they're like, oh, that wasn't to my liking. Okay, fair enough. But you should know, everybody should know, if it's not on your radar, this is a horror movie. It is a straight up horror movie. It is not to be mistaken with any other type of genre at all. It is badass. It is scary. It is atmospheric. It's haunting. It's so well crafted. I mean, it's 100 out of 100 on the production design, the cinematography. Man, I can't say enough about it. I'm just so blown away. It'd be really easy for me just to say this is my favorite film of the year. I know what recency bias is. I got to let that simmer down for a little while, so I'm going to keep my ranking exactly the same. But for the fact that what it has done has made vampires scary again, and I mean terrifyingly scary, that no other film does that. I don't care what anybody has to say. This movie has made vampires scary again. And that is not, if that was easy to do, you know how many people would be doing it? Everybody would be doing it.
You should have a hat that says
making vampires scary again.
Yeah, making vampires scary again.
Man, it was stone cold awesome. Now, I spent the week, I've become obsessed with this movie. I've spent the week watching the original, the remake by Werner Herzog, and the 2000 version where Willem Dafoe was playing a sort of an adaptation of the making of Nosferatu. And that was actually really, really good. It was so entertaining. It's also not very well reviewed. It's not panned. But everybody sort of gives it 3.5, and some below that. I was like, again, you got these people that are uptight about something. And I think that there's this image that people want to portray about themselves.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I am a cinephile, and I've seen 25,000 movies, and 24,000 of those were from 1922 silent films. I am awesome. I am a film god. You know what? They see it with an open eye, or a pair of open eyes. This is so good. You can't be precious about the past when something new and refreshing is coming in. It was amazing. And there was some influence from Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola version, where Gary Oldman was playing Dracula. So it brought one element of that story into it, but that was it was about the connection between the vampire and the object of his desire.
Yeah. So Lily Rose Depp,
my God, she was so
and Bill
good.
Skarsgård, she was incredible. And
oh my God, she was
same
so
thing, the physical performance that she was able to pull off. Because knowing Eggers, someone who tries to do everything as practical as he can. So vocal effects were minimal, but also practical effects. Lily Rose Depp did those contortions.
There was contortions.
Yeah.
But there was also like centuries of emotion and her grief that she just wore on her face. Like, it takes a lot of talent somewhere. Like, between Eggers and her, were able to craft something truly unique. I don't think she's going to get any awards love because I think it was too late of a release. But this movie, her in this movie, her in this role, her performance is Oscar worthy.
It is. I don't think it's I don't think the Academy likes these kinds of films.
They don't.
For the front runners.
They don't.
But is her performance best of the year? Probably. It should be up there in the conversation.
It is so fantastic. I could wax about this movie forever and ever and ever. I want to go see it again in the theater. It makes me want to watch all of his filmography again because it's a remake. It's also kind of like his greatest hits.
Yeah.
It's got Willem Dafoe, and he's got some great dialogue. So in some scenes, you're very much reminded of The Lighthouse. All of the natural lighting with how everything's warm candlelight lit. There's no grip lights. It's all natural lighting, like The Witch.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got this epic feel to it, like The Northman. And I could, this is so good. I'm raving about it. You should know that the Eggers is one of the pinnacle directors for me. So if you don't like Eggers, then I would say you want to tune into somebody else's opinion about it. I would still say give it a try because Lily Rose Depp is worth the price of admission. Bill Skarsgård is worth the price of admission. Is atmospheric. It's oh man.
So also starring Nicholas Hoult, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin. Who do you really consider is the leading role? Do you go see this film for Bill Skarsgård, like knowing who is Nosferatu and what's his interpretation? Or do you watch this film purposely because Lily Rose's Depp, like her portrayal of that character? Or
I would say,
or we've got Nicholas Hoult, who is arguably meant to be the leading man.
He is, but if you understand the story, then you know that it's kind of like this reverse thing where he exists so to propel the story, which is normally reserved for a woman. So that's kind of, it's interesting that back then, they had this, the man was in service to propelling the woman's arc forward. But I would say for sure, you see this movie for Lily Rose Depp, and if you understand, and we've talked about this before, where you don't oversaturate the most interesting thing about your movie, particularly when it's something weird or strange, like let's say like Yorgos Lanthimos. When he goes full batshit crazy insane and has it dialed at 100, it can be alienating to a lot of people. Not to me, I love that. But what's haunting is when you mix it in for like just a little bit, like 10 minutes in, you give it just this something strange and unusual, and then you take that away. And you create this thirst for it. And so David Lynch is a master of this. Terry Gilliam is a master of this. Tarkovsky is a master of this. You tease the audience with the unusual. You still have a really good story behind it. But in this case, the unusual is the Skarsgård performance because he's not in the, like, there's not a lot of scenes where he's in it doing his thing. There's enough to satisfy, but it leaves you wanting more. And that's why it's so haunting, because you've not gotten bored or tired of it. Like, I want to hear that voice again. I want to hear it in Dolby Atmos. like penetrating my body. Like it was so immersive. It's a very dark movie. It's a very low key movie.
Yeah.
My only gripe is the theater lights, the little exit safety lights, were so bright on this dark screen that it was a little distracting. Like, honestly, people that work at the movie theater, come on, care about the movies that you're showing, care about the people that are in the movies watching the movies, and make it a better experience for them. Like, shut the door.
Dude, that's another t-shirt. Shut the door. And then make vampires scary again. To be honest, that is amazing merch. I would just say, make vampires scary again in a MAGA hat style.
They're all patented.
Yeah.
Hey, what did you think of Nosferatu? I know you gave it a little heart.
I didn't really want to talk about it much until we talked about it on the pod. And then I wanted to do some research on it because I loved it so much. And then I wanted to simmer on it. Did it meet expectations? Did I have expectations? Where do I feel it would sit in his filmography? And
that's so tough.
Yeah.
Because all of his movies are nearly equally identically good. There's not a clear on any given day a 1 through 4 with his movies. It could shift with your moods because they're all masterpieces. How can you rank masterpieces?
And I think maybe that's the important part of the conversation is you watch Eggers' films not because you're somebody who necessarily loves horror or that's the first thing you want to watch and are drawn to, because I'm not drawn to horror movies. But Eggers does it so well with a lens and with an eye and with his writing and his directing and choice of film and story that he tackles, that these films that are classified as horrors.
But let's examine that real quick. Who is it that's actually classifying and making that horror genre? I think it's the marketing people, because fans of the horror genre are super passionate and they go to the movies, and it's one of the most profitable ways to make money, because generally speaking, horrors are low budget thrillers and you get people in. It's a profit machine. I would say, for me, a more accurate description of Robert Eggers is that he makes folk tales. He makes films about folk tales.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Nosferatu is definitely a horror movie because it's got a scary vampire. It's horror, but that is a Transylvanian folktale.
Correct.
The Lighthouse was a New England folktale. The Witch was a New England folktale. The Northman was an Icelandic folktale.
Yeah, his lore that he uses and builds
it's
his
ancient
stories.
And medieval. Oh my goodness. I do not think horror would not be the first word that I would describe him as being a master of. So there are elements and there's shades, of course, and his movies are dark, but for me, they're not horror.
I'd classify him as authentic. There's an authenticity to Eggers that nobody else has as a director, like the passion behind the project, the amount of detail that he uses when he makes his films to put you in this space, in this world, or with these characters and with this story, and then tell that story. He's batting 100 without batting an eyelash. It was a tremendous feat. I mean, even to the cast, it was interesting to see the cast that he put together and the scale of the movie compared to the rest of his other films. Because if you're looking at it, his filmography, you could see that the story arc is going upwards at the moment for him. Of the test was, how much money could we give this director? How big could he potentially get in the pop culture mania? And that was with The Northman. Now,
that was coming right after post-COVID. It was so unfair, but it did make money after it got to VOD.
Correct.
I'm so grateful for that. It is such a The Northman's also should be on your watch list.
But there was a bit of he was a bit bummed about maybe not having final cut with it, and he seemed in a lot of interviews a bit frustrated with the film. But that's another film that we would say famously, like Trap, didn't get the love that it should have. And Nosferatu.
Let's change that.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's make Vikings sexy again. Hey, by the way, a big shout out to the cinematographer that he uses, Jaron Balashki. This guy, he's worked on every single one of Eggers' movies.
Dude, what an eye.
Super eye. Like, The Lighthouse was a square ratio. This was 4:3. So it was still, you know how like in a ghost story, David Lowery's Ghost Story, it was also a 4:3. And the way that you make your compositions has to be so much more carefully, meticulously crafted, because you don't have as much wide space. So it's easier for a subject to fill the frame. And it takes a certain amount of talent in the craft of photography to understand how to fill the frames so wonderfully. So he has outdone himself. Robert Eggers has picked a master cinematographer to be his, essentially his co-filmmaker, because one of the great things about the Eggers films are the visual language of everything. Like, everything is perfect. The lighting is perfect. The angles are perfect. The lenses are perfect. Everything that they do, it visually is masterpieces. You don't even need dialogue, but the dialogue then becomes the icing on the cake. And the dialogue is always fantastic. And the fonts he uses for like subtitles.
We were able to watch it together, and the anticipation built up for it, choosing a good seat, having an Atmos in the cinema. And it was like watching a master at work. And it was a symphony with soundtrack, with the sound editing, the sound choices, with the little effects that they did use, the visuals on screen, the cinematography of the film. It's all pieces humming together. It was a beautiful film. And if you're expecting the film, because it is quite big right now, I think some people are maybe a bit shocked that horror is doing this well right now, like that, how big this film is getting. And if you're unaware of his other films, or are wondering if this ends up not being as horror as it's gonna be, this is the most horror that Eggers has done.
I totally agree. I feel like I totally felt while we were watching it that it was the most horror that you and I have even watched together. I thought it was scary.
Yeah, and at the same time, because normally I don't sit well with doing deep horror, and I don't know if it was Eggers or the acting or the story, because all those parts were working so well together. I loved it. It didn't really matter that it was a horror film or that it was a genre that I famously don't watch the most of. It probably had the biggest influence, and I was amazed watching it.
Big thumbs up for me.
Yeah. And it was nice to see that. I always love his use of cast and bringing people to the forefront that we either are new people that we need to know of, like Anya Taylor-Joy, or someone who always uses the same people, kind of like how Wes Anderson does. I love how he always has Willem Dafoe somewhere and the different roles that he gives him. And I it's another one where I'd give him supporting actor so far.
Willem?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I loved his interpretation of that part.
Oh, look, like if we were getting into like award conversation with this, I could see multiple noms: director, sound, cinematography, score, Lily Rose Depp, Bill Skarsgård, makeup and effects.
Yeah,
practical effect. Dude, in a more honest world where people could accept something that has the horror tag with it, this is a well-crafted movie. And by well-crafted, I mean, damn, it's so good. If you can get past being, there is that horror stigma. I'd say for this is that if you can stomach Dracula in any kind of sense, this is a scary version of Dracula for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah. What did you expect Dracula to do? Everybody knows the cultural reference, so you're going to see that on screen eventually.
And see it, you do. and feel it you do. It's so good. All right, Nosferatu, big thumbs up for me. Go see it in the theater twice.
Yeah, twice.
Join us for a viewing. Come visit the Film Dogs. We're going to see it in VMAX. Dolby Atmosphere.
Dolby Atmosphere.
Dolby Atmosphere. Dolby Atmosphere. Dolby Atmosphere.
This brings us to film number 3 that I've watched. This is American Dreamer by director Paul Dektor. And this is his first major release. And it's a comedy starring as a leading man Peter Dinklage opposing Shirley MacLaine. It's got Matt Dillon in it. It's got Kimberly Quinn, Danny Glover as well.
Man, Danny Glover.
Danny Glover.
And Matt Dillon. There's worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because it's a comedy. Like when you hear Peter Dinklage as your leading man, what comes to mind?
I automatically think that he's not been in any awards darlings. So like from that aspect, it's not because of his littleness. It's just because he's not been in anything that's been, supremely well received in that sense. Outside of Game of Thrones, of which he's awesome.
And Elf. Come on.
And Elf. I love Peter Dinklage. I wouldn't be rushing out the theater to see it opening night for a Peter Dinklage feature unless he was cast in the next Eggers feature.
Yeah, so it's a comedy. It tells the story of Peter Dinklage's character trying to get his own home for the first time. He's working as a professor who's going nowhere in his career, and it tackles that millennial conversation: is he ever going to own a home? And that's his dream. And at what lengths will he go to do that? And he finds an ad that would offer him to be a live-in if you're willing to live with somebody else and then get the house when they pass away. So he basically spends his life savings to live in this mansion that he'll eventually get when this lady dies. And she is maybe not all that everybody is saying that she is. And it turns out to maybe not be a good contract in the end. So it's a comedy, but it's also like quite painful to watch if you are somebody who's trying to get home ownership and you're like, yeah, that's what I've had to do. I've had to move back in with my grandma for a couple years so I can try and get a house someday. I really like Matt Dillon when he gets cast off to the side of the movie because he always plays a bastard really well, and he delivers in this.
He never plays a nice guy, does he?
No, he doesn't. But there's a smirk that he gives, and just like a jerkiness that he always puts off. And he does it so well in this. And then you never know what kind of part Danny Glover is going to do because he's done Wes Anderson movies, and then he does action movies with Mel Gibson, Lethal Weapon. What you know about Danny Glover?
I know plenty about Danny Glover. Lethal Weapon? Grew up on Lethal Weapon.
Okay, yeah. So were you a fan?
Oh, yeah.
I was a big Lethal Weapon guy.
Which one was your favorite? I really liked the first one, but I especially liked the one with Jet Li sort of took apart the pistol with one hand.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's one of the best scenes of all time. This is what I mean when a director knows how, if Jet Li was in every scene of that movie, it would not have been very good. They just sort of sparingly used him to be such a supreme badass. Really enjoyed it. And I love Danny Glover. Yeah.
Lethal Weapon or
Garden State. Lethal Weapon.
Yeah. So anyways, I thought there was a serviceable comedy that it'd be great for date night. It's not gonna offend anybody. If you're a millennial, it might make you cry just because you'll never own a home.
Right on.
Yeah, so it was a bit of fun. What was next up on your list?
My next one was Kneecap, which
I've heard of this,
which came to me via the Prime Video algorithm. Movies that you might like. I never heard of it. So not all algorithms are bad.
No, okay.
So I have not heard of this director before, Mr. Rich Peppiatt. The synopsis of this film is, When fate brings Belfast teacher JJ into the orbit of self-confessed low-life scum, Naoise and Liam Og, the needle drops on a hip-hop act like no other. Rapping in their native Irish, they lead a movement to save their mother tongue. This movie blew me away. Now, I do love hip-hop. That's not the only reason I like this movie, though. In fact, I wouldn't even say that the hip-hop was like super outstanding. They really played the same song kind of over and over. Yeah. Much like the movie Hustle and Flow, which I also loved. And this really reminded me of a mixture between Trainspotting and Hustle and Flow.
Nice.
It just had this, even though Trainspotting was Scotland and this was Northern Ireland, it just had this feel about it that was so Irish and so confident in its Irish identity and its Irish patriotism. And it's all about patriotism and like honest patriotism in a way that they celebrate their traditions and they speak in traditional Irish. And it's immensely important to these young boys and their family. And one of the rappers' dads is played by Michael Fassbender, and is a minor supporting role, but played with such grace and weight at the same time. And it's largely about making sure that indigenous languages don't disappear. I think with the opening scroll talks about 45, it could have been the closing scroll, 45 indigenous languages die every year. And it's a passion of this group of people that want to keep their language alive. And it's hard to identify when we don't live there. Like I don't live in Northern Ireland, and I don't know what it's like to have the British occupied there. I know what the American history says about British occupation. Mm-hmm. We booted them out centuries ago. Yeah. And Northern Ireland has not been able to do that. So like I kind of feel like maybe I understand what the conflict is about. But that's what this movie's about. It's these people want to maintain their cultural heritage at all costs. And it doesn't matter. Like that is what matters to them. They're passionate about it, but it's done in a very nice, musical, fun, entertaining way. A lot of fun. No actors that you would have seen before except for Michael Fassbender. And it was just killer good. If you like music movies, even if you like Once, this is worth seeing. The music is nothing like that.
Okay.
But it's a very similar sort of low budget.
Something that's built around the music.
Yeah, built around the music. There, a lot of it's about the making of the music and how the sort of band got together. But you're in for a treat listening to these guys talk in their native Gaelic language. It's wonderful to watch. It's got a wonderful message. And a lot of fun. Liked it a lot. Opened up Letterboxd. Was like, yeah, getting pretty decent reviews from my tribe. I'll give it a whirl. Oh man, I loved it. It probably in my top 10 of the year. Loved it.
Nice. So I was able to tackle during the holidays A Real Pain, directed by Jesse Eisenberg. Mm-hmm. We're Jesse Eisenberg fans, I would say, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Especially his portrayal of
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg in The Social Network. But
I like him in everything, but that would sort of earn him a pass on a bad movie, which I've not really seen. I've liked all of his movies.
An interesting career, directing and the choice to do directing right now, and he loves writing. And the story that he chose, or the subject, and who he chose to cast, because he cast himself and he's opposite Kieran Culkin. And the story is just that their cousins and their grandmother, who they were close with, passes away, and they kind of had agreement to go back to her home country and maybe visit the house where she lived. And she was famously in World War II and was somebody who suffered in a concentration camp. So they wanted to do one of those tours through Poland. So it's a drama. Yeah, it's a drama.
No laughs here.
I liked some of the interpretations that I had heard, that it almost feels like he wrote this like a play. And I think you'll like the film more if you watch it through that lens. I feel like if I watched it again, I would probably like the movie more than I did on the first time. Eisenberg plays a great role in the film, but Culkin 100% eats his breakfast on screen. So it was good to hear that he ended up getting.
And congratulations, Mr. Culkin, on your Golden Globes win for best.
That's what I was saying.
Actor.
It was nice that he got the nom. It sounds like he might get further noms down the road, and he ended up winning. But I think it just kind of goes to show how interesting a film I think this is, and how it is in pop culture, and that Culkin got a Golden Globe for it. I think it's worth its time alone. The subject matter I find interesting because we all have weird family dynamics, and I feel like we all have met a character like Kieran Culkin before. Like we've had a friend or a family member or someone close to us that has had a friend or family member that are this kind of overbearing and cool and depressed, and this kind of perfect mixture of also inspirational but also irrational. It's a very interesting role. Very interesting. And I wonder who else could do this than Culkin. So that was kind of the big lead up for me of wanting to watch this film, because I don't think it's not an everyday happy film that you're going to go watch, but the performances in it are so good, and the conversations that they have are, it was a beautiful film. I don't always like using that word to describe films that I enjoy that convey kind of a feeling, because you're maybe trying to put yourself in their shoes. And what if this was your grandmother and you were on a trip on a train trying to visit a family member's important house where they grew up? He films it through that lens, and they did a good job. I think there's be some marks against it that people might think it's a bit boring. And
you have to have a love of slow burn movies sometimes.
Exactly. So it's nice to see it kind of getting some love in the award season right now. I think it's a worthy watch. I'm not sure where it's going to sit on my best of the year. But it is definitely worth your time. It's probably like in the conversation of top 15, maybe top 20.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
I'd say for me, like Trap definitely is in my top 20. Blink Twice, probably. I'm going to have to look a little closer, because I would reckon there's a lot of that sort of 4-star fare that came out this year. Like I really like Long Legs.
Yeah.
So to rank, I'd have to look at it. Like I'm more interested in getting my top 10 nailed down at the moment. Right on. A Real Pain by Jesse Eisenberg. Well, to bring me to my final film of our Watchlist suggestion episode, from Alfonso Cuarón.
Nice.
Y tu mama tambien, which is Spanish for "and your mom too."
And you.
Now, this film by Mr. Cuarón, whose most probably accessible film to date was Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban, which is probably my favorite of the Harry Potter movies. But I liked that one, Gary Oldman's introduction to the franchise. Mr. Cuarón, also director of Children of Men, one of my favorite, one of the best sci-fis of the 21st century. Gravity, Roma. This film follows, in Mexico, 2 teenage boys and an attractive older woman who embark on a road trip and learn a thing or two about life, friendship, sex, and each other. It stars from Rogue One and the Andor series, Diego Luna. And for me, the Motorcycle Diaries and Mozart in the Jungle, the wonderful actor Gael Garcia Bernal, and from one of M. Night Shyamalan's more recent films, Old.
Okay.
Man, I love this guy. This film has been on my watch list for a very long time. It finally just got released on streaming, because I couldn't buy it. I couldn't rent it. There was no way to watch it. Super excited to watch it. Now, I'm really quite sensitive about leaving a comment and a review on Letterboxd about it, because it's real easy, and a lot of people have these sort of same thoughts. And I think we're in a generation where we can all kind of start making connections in our cinematic language. But I guarantee you that Luca Guadagnino saw this before he made Challengers. And I guarantee you that it was an inspiration for Challengers in more ways than one, but definitely some of the themes that it tackles is the emotional bond between young men.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's not age specific, but because they're young men in this story, it serves more. And Challengers, they're young men as well. So I tend to more combine those things together. Okay. But it explores this bond of highly sexualized men and a shared attraction to a same woman.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Through the lens of a road trip through extremely poor rural Mexico. It has this absolute. So the movies that this guy has directed should already give you an idea, if you've seen them, that the quality of the cinematography is absolutely fantastic. The quality of the dialogue is absolutely fantastic. It is a foreign film, so it's subtitled. It's in Spanish.
Okay.
It is, hence the Y tu mamá también. The acting is first rate. Everything is relatable. It's fun. It's heartbreaking. It's an emotional experience. At the end, it lingers. Like you're just kind of like, oh, the director knows how to leave you wanting more and manipulate your emotions. And this is it is a very emotional movie.
Okay.
I would say for fans of Challengers, fans of Challengers would like this movie a lot, except it doesn't have any tennis, but all of the behind the scenes drama and the tension between three people, and almost like that scene, one of the scenes in Challengers was sort of like almost a very direct homage to Y tu mamá también.
Okay.
It was wonderful to watch. I really recommend it for fans of foreign films for sure. It's probably one of the best Spanish language films that I've ever seen, and a gem in this man's filmography. Really, really love it a lot. But this is for people that love the foreign language films, because otherwise you're going to probably have a hard time focusing in on reading and watching the expressions of the face. And it is very sexual, very, very, very sexual. But not in an unhealthy way, not like in a pornographic way, like in a real way. That I think that Latinos are world renowned for high libido, so there's one thing on their mind through this whole entire movie, and they're not ashamed to talk about it. So it's a very openly sexualized conversations in the movie, including from the women. It was refreshing. It was healthy. It wasn't pornographic. It was healthy. It was. And it was real.
If we were a modern podcast and this was a segment and I said, is this movie pornographic? Yes or no, Lord Marcus?
No.
You would say no.
Not pornographic.
Yeah. Fair enough.
That could lead down a really dangerous rabbit hole anyway. But we've talked about poor things, or like, are we going to shrug away from like why when violence is celebrated? Hey, are you fucking kidding me? We're going to talk about sex as the reason that movies are R-rated and nobody wants to fucking talk about them or see them, or they want to demote them. But hey, it's okay if we have American Sniper by old Clint Eastwood. Bullshit. I'm not going to stand for that. I love violent movies. I'm not going to have people that worship at the altar of violent movies tell me that I can't watch a movie about sex. Any movie about sex of any rating of any content, it's none of their fucking business. At the end of the day, it's not. And so while I say this movie is not pornographic, in my opinion, if it was, so fucking what?
If this was another segment and I said, Lord Marcus, is this movie positive? Yes or no?
Yes, it is absolutely movie positive.
It's pro-movie.
Pro-movie. Oh, but it has so many things to say. Here's the thing. It has that story, but on the backdrop through this road trip that they're taking. This is a road trip movie. You witness what's happening in rural Mexico at the time of a big political upheaval. There was decades of one party in rule in Mexico, and during the change of a new political party taking over, what was happening in the country at the time, super snapshot, but almost a documentary in the background of what was going on. What movie positive? Absolutely.
Nice.
Liked it a lot.
Well, my next violent film, but implied violence. And the master of implied violence and horror, right?
Suspense.
Suspense.
Well, Psycho was horror.
That's why we are doing our episode in the future. What is a horror?
Mm-hmm.
This is the Grandmaster Alfred Hitchcock's 1948 Rope, starring John Dahl, Farley Granger, and Jim Stewart.
Jimmy James Stewart. Hey, cold open. I mean, like the most violent thing happens the opening split second.
All its cards are out on the table with right after the credits roll.
Hey, I liked this a lot. Would it be my favorite Hitchcock? Definitely not my favorite, but in my upper echelon of his filmography. I liked it a lot. And here's one of the things that I really liked about it. Oh, did you even talk about the synopsis? I don't want to take over. I just stepped right in prematurely. Sorry.
No, I think that's how good this film is we have some fantastic thoughts on it. And I wanted to have a free flowed conversation on it.
So there's these two guys and it opens, they're murdering a classmate, and they host a dinner party, and it all takes place in real time. And the body of this dead classmate is put into a box, and think like rich high class. Yeah, rich high class. It feels like it's in an apartment in like modern like New York City, and they're rich kids. Yeah, definitely like Ivy League school dudes.
Which I think is an interesting all of that we just said is an interesting premise to me.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing is that it is an interesting premise. It's an interesting premise from, if you look at it from what would the motivation be. And I think that like this story is ripe for a remake today. It would not be like a 5-star, but Blumhouse could do this.
Okay.
Super low budget. Like it's one location.
Long shots. It was fantastic. It's another film when we're talking about if you watch through the lens of a play, it is the performances that are given, because a lot of them are like overly animated, and we would use the word like overacted. Like some of the conversations between John Dahl and Farley Granger's characters were over the top at times, but I really like James Stewart kind of brought everything back together. He was like the mature one of the film that really gave it some finesse.
But you know how like 1917 felt like one continuous shot through the whole entire movie?
Yeah.
This did that without the benefit of any kind of graphics. It wasn't one long take, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't more than 3. It was amazing. Like there was no mistakes allowed to be made by the cameraman, by anyone, like where the microphones are. Like it had to be extremely well choreographed. But Hitchcock this is where he proved, hey, not only can I write a good story and edit it to be very suspenseful, I can get my team to be like a symphony. I am in complete control of absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So the other part of this is that the actual tension of the movie is these guys wondering if they're going to get caught, and like the crack starting to show is the pressure. One of them sure they're going to get away with it. The other one's sure they're not going to get away with it. And this to me is very Dostoevsky. It is what is great about this film is not that these men have committed a murder. It is what happens to men that commit murder. What happens to their mind when they're trying to get away with it? Because it takes a rational, sane person cannot really commit murder and get away with it. The guilt overcomes them. So like, if you're not overcome by guilt, it would suggest that you're a psychopath. And so if someone other than a psychopath commits murder, it is the emotional pressure of the guilt of committing murder so much that you can't even last an hour before you have to confess.
Yeah,
or can you shove it way down deep inside and forget about it? And that's what I think the allure of this film is. It's asking those questions. It doesn't give you any rock solid answers. It gives a satisfying conclusion, but at the end of the day, the answers are not given to you. They're there for you to kind of figure out for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that young people would see this in a different light as older people would, because like I would identify more with the James Stewart character, but I would imagine that other people could say, oh, well, I see it from the young men's character because you're more identifying with the person that's closer to your age.
It's an incredible social commentary, that film, of the dialogue between each other, the concept of also what do high-class people do to get off, or being drunk with power and rich and stuff like that? What do you do when you're bored? Like, you could make all these assumptions through the lens that Alfred Hitchcock gives us, because we just see these high-class guys in beautiful suits and a looks like a sweet New York apartment. And it looks like they're getting off on murder of a friend, of a classmate, and hearing the dialogue of people, like you said, the only people that actually commit murders, psychopaths. So what's that conversation? You start hearing them come up with ways of why maybe this classmate deserved it, that they might not be in the wrong, and then that they should be proud of it. And then the audacity to have a dinner party the moment murder commences and happens, and how are they going to get away with it, and the audacity to have the body in the room while you have dinner at the same time. It is a wild commentary on would you be capable of this? What is humanity capable of? And could we get away with it?
And just like a play, it's also in real time. So everything that happens, there's no cutting away. There's no editing that fast forwards a day. It takes place from the time in real time, the time that it starts, and an hour and a half later is an hour and a half later in the movie. It was wonderfully shot. Brilliant movie. Loved it a lot.
That's why I like the thread, because these social commentaries with these, if you interpret it through the lens of a play and scenes and different acts and that art, you'll enjoy the films like Juror Number 2 or A Real Pain or Rope, especially even Jury Number 2, of which I feel like I forgot to say earlier, is just that commentary on how justice works in the States. Could the guilt of something wrong, or maybe a crime that you committed, could it overpower you more than to do the right thing? And then if so, what does justice look like? So on the opposite side, if you put someone away who deserves it, even if they didn't commit the crime, is that a job well done? And is that justice? And should maybe the person who is the better person, if you could actually give a judgment on someone and you let that person go away free, is that the right answer? And that's why it's very interesting to hear Eastwood maybe ask that question, even in the twilight of his career. Like I said, A Real Pain, Rope, Juror Number 2, good dovetails and good social commentaries and good films to watch, like if they're plays. And any thoughts on how you put together your recent watch list and ended up on all these films?
Hey, look, I've got a tremendous amount of different avenues of how my watch list gets constructed. A lot of it comes from Letterboxd rabbit holes. But also, I think that I'm able to ascertain because I have discovered that I am a fan of directors more than I am of actors. And so one of the things that I like to do is to make sure that I complete filmographies of the filmmakers that I like.
Yeah.
But I also research of what films influenced them. So the films of David Lynch will take me back to Billy Wilder. It'll take me back to Fellini. It'll take me back to the silent films, and then the same with Martin Scorsese. And when you can digest what has influenced other directors, you can sort of go back in time, and then through Letterboxd, you see who likes them, and you look at your tribe's list of 5-star movies.
Yeah,
and then what the algorithms give to you, like there's just so many great resources to build your watch list. And a lot of it means that if sometimes you got to watch some bad movies, but if you find your right sort of social algorithm where like that's what we want to do is to help you find those best movies and ignore the ones that you shouldn't be watching, but to not ignore the ones that people are telling you to ignore. Even if not one is specifically telling you don't see this movie, if it's not being talked about, then essentially someone's saying, don't see this movie. So we kind of want to cure that with some of these. It's like, yes, these movies are definitely worth seeing if you are an enjoyer of the same films that, or close to the kind of films that we talk about.
And that's why, I think tools like Letterboxd are invaluable these days. So
it's essential. Like it is so essential to modern cinephile life. You have to have it. Like, the amount of 5-star movies out there, like for me, has gone from 5 to 50 million. A whole nother world has been opened up. You need access to it.
Yeah, and props to Letterboxd and that community, and even the concept of the app and the updates they've been doing to it, because to have all that information in one place and to be able to interact as well that's been a game changer for, I think, really for me being able to find some of my more favorite films that I've watched in the last couple of years than I have in my whole life. And tools like that, I'm for. If you only had one film that you could recommend from your watch list this week. Nosferatu. Me as well. Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. B. Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for joining me on this ride through this precious thing we call life. Our cinematic journey through the decades of the hourglass of time.
The hourglass of time. And if you do have time, you can find us on our Instagram under Film Dogs, or on Facebook.
Dogs.
On Facebook, The Film Dogs.
The Film Dog.
And we are both on Letterboxd. You should be able to find me as Brenton Blurry or Mr. B. And you're under your full name, aren't you, as well? You're Lord
I'm
Marcus.
under the Lord Marcus.
If you just type in capital LORD, you'll find him.
Hey, you know what? All you have to do is type in a David Lynch film and look for my 5-star review of it. Doesn't matter which one it is.
But thanks for listening. We noticed in recent days as well from listeners that we have some people in Singapore. So if you're from Singapore, shout outs.
Hi, Singaporeans. We love you.
We love you. Come to Brisbane.
Or invite us over and we will see Nosferatu in Singapore.
Yes, show us some fantastic Singaporean films.
Life's too short.
Life's too short for bad cinemas, people.
Way too short.
Woof.
Woof.